Now, I would say that looks like summer in Texas. Not a horrible drought, and yet not a huge deluge of rain. And you can see the towering cumulus off in the distance. That's pretty characteristic of July in Texas. That's what I remember from the old years. Here's how we're doing on rainfall during the past week. This goes back to July 1st. East Texas really getting it there, some amounts upward of 6 to 8 inches. But there are problems when you go off to the south. San Antonio, Corpus Christi, Laredo. Yeah, I guess there's a bit of a drought down there. But the rest of Texas, up north and in West Texas, everybody's getting a little bit of something. How is the nation doing? Let's take a look. Here we have the year-to-date rainfall relative to normal. So anything in the green and blue shades, those are going to be above normal, and all the yellow shades are below normal. So yeah, definitely a drought there in Amarillo, Dodge City, back to Pueblo and into the southern Rockies. So it could be a bit of a fire season in the central Rockies in some areas. Drought conditions also extend westward into Nevada and northern California. However, the eastern U.S. and the Mississippi River Valley looking pretty good, and also the Corn Belt, well, at least the western parts of the Corn Belt up into Montana. There we've got conditions on the wet side. The current surface map is looking like this. Things have quieted down a little bit. That polar front that we had in the northern plains has weakened, and we're seeing air mass modification on the cool side with temperatures back behind that front coming up into the 70s and 80s. We've got a dry line extending from a triple point in the Black Hills down through the high plains of Nebraska and into the Texas Panhandle, where we have temperatures near 100 at Amarillo and 101 at Dodge City. We can see the moisture coming up from the Gulf, mid-70s up into the DFW area to Paris, and 70s extending up into the Ponca City area and up into Columbia, Missouri. That represents a large maritime tropical air mass that covers much of the Mississippi River Basin all the way down to Texas, and we've got one good squall line out in Alabama. Also, we've got a few squall lines up in the northeast U.S. You can see them. We've got one line through the New York City to Allentown area, another up in the Hudson Bay region out to Boston, and a third one, even stronger, in the woodlands of northwestern Maine. And that's just out of this trough that's up in the St. Lawrence River Valley. Overall, we've got high pressure covering much of the eastern U.S., and that's an extension of the Bermuda High, which we find off the coast, little 10-20 millibar isobar out there in the Atlantic, and then just 10-16s all through the southeast U.S. The real weather is up in Canada. We scroll that north, and you can see an occluded system up there in Saskatchewan, pretty wound up there, and still a lot of warm weather up in the James Bay and Hudson Bay region. That area around Fort Severn up to 86, but where we had 83 way up there at that Quebec community near the Labrador Gulf there, they've cooled down from 83 down to, looks like around 60. Okay, so what exactly is driving the weather? Let's go up to 500 millibars. This is the mid-tropospheric level, up at about 3 kilometers, about 18,000 feet. And this is good for picking out shortwave disturbances, and we can also see a little bit of the long-wave pattern at the same time. So what we have right now is a very progressive flow. If we look at the jet, this is going to correspond roughly to the polar front jet position. In fact, this is skimming the bottom of that. It pretty much goes from west to east, and it's not very meridional like what we had a couple weeks ago. Got it divided up into a couple of closed lows. There's a bunch right there. One that's an actual cutoff low off the Atlantic coast. And that's about it. And we have to be careful to also look south of the jet. We're talking about this area because, that's where the big subtropical ridge is. And where is that ridge? How do we find that? Well, obviously, it's kind of this entire area, but let's look at the anticyclonic flow. Okay, down in Mexico, we've got easterly flow. In Arizona and New Mexico, we got westerly flow. So it's going to be right in between there, roughly about right in there. So we can kind of, we can connect that up and kind of get an idea where that subtropical ridge is. So that's going to be right in there. Probably strongest right there south of El Paso. It looks like a second one and maybe even a third one south of Florida and out into the Bahamas. Okay. And then in between, looks like we got this little weak tropical depression, tropical disturbance kind of in this region right here. It's not like a tropical storm or anything like that, but, it is kind of a disturbed flow area right there in North Carolina, and that's probably bringing up some of the rain chances. In fact, that's been kind of grazing that area the past couple of days. And it looks like another one right there in Illinois. Now I'm going to do something pretty neat. I don't think we've ever done this on the webcast. I mean, it's not that spectacular, but we're going to run this through hour by hour for the entire run. So here we go. Let's check this out. So there you go. Let's slow that down a little bit. I know that's kind of a lot to take in. So let's see what happens. So I think what we should do is kind of look upstream and look at the movement of these troughs. And it looks like most of them just kind of lift up into the Canadian prairies. This next one here kind of plunges into the Great Lakes region. And this other one tries to take advantage of some of the height falls in this area. But no go, it still stays up in Canada. And then the subtropical ridges. Let's look down here. Yeah, this one really builds in New Mexico. And during the run, 72, 84, 96 hours, it stays there in New Mexico. And let's kind of track the movement of that to the very end. Yeah, it looks like at the very end it backs up into Oklahoma and Arkansas. So what does that mean? Let's stop things for a second. Okay, when the subtropical ridge is parked out there in New Mexico, that means that Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri is all going to be under northerly flow. That can be important because when you're bringing down flow from the north, that brings down cold air in the mid and upper levels. That can give us differential advection, which destabilizes things. You get more of a cold over warm situation. So that can produce kind of a rainy pattern in this area right here. Let's run this forward some more, and I'm going to kind of do this manually. Pretty good northerly flow going into the weekend, and another important factor is the winds are about 20 to 30 knots. That means any storms that do go up are going to be sheared. Get a good speed differential between the lower and upper levels. That means good bulk shear, and that's going to prolong your storm longevity. So that means you can get more organization of thunderstorms if they do develop. Let's go through some more. And let's see, we're past Saturday morning, going into Sunday evening. Yeah, it looks a little bit stormy up there in the northwest. And I know next week we're going to start picking up that subtropical ridge, moving into the plains, and let's see when that happens. Okay, it looks like it's making its move around Tuesday next week, the 14th. Now by the 15th, it's moved into Texas proper, so that's probably going to shut things down completely as far as storms. And they will be on the decrease in the Mississippi River Valley. And then by Thursday, the ridge is right in this area right here. In fact, it extends all the way into the Atlantic. So it looks like kind of a dry pattern there for the southern U.S., except right along the Gulf, where we've got easterly flow developing, and that's kind of a late summer pattern. And we would expect to see maybe some easterly waves moving through this flow. That can bring up chances of rain along the Gulf Coast region. And let's see what happens going into... Oh, is that it? Yeah, 195 hours, 198. Okay, so all we've got is the 201-hour forecast. And I think that's good enough. So by late next week, big subtropical ridge across just south of the Mason-Dixon line, and south of that, deep tropical flow, easterlies. So that's going to represent a shift in the pattern. And also, we've got a cutoff low approaching the California coast, so things may start going on the decline there in places like San Francisco as far as weather. So in Texas, things look a lot different compared to yesterday, and you can see this little storm going up there west of Denton, kind of towards, I guess that'd be Breckenridge, and it lays down a little bit of a cold pool. It's pretty spectacular. See that right there? These things definitely have influences at the mesoscale. There's another one just east of Texarkana. And yeah, you can watch that right there. So at the small scale, things are definitely not homogeneous. And that's the reason why models tend to have trouble. All these small scale interactions, they're hard to pick up by the surface network. And you can see even the lakes have an effect. See right there, that's, I don't know what lake that is. There's a couple of them north of Dallas, and they produce this little wake effect. All right, let's look at weather elsewhere around the U.S. And there's what we got going on in the southwest states. Wow, the salt flats there in Utah really stand out. Anyway, yeah, a little instability there in the central Rockies and some storms going up there in the Nebraska Panhandle, where we do have I think maybe at least an MCD. I don't know about a watch, but this is under the gun for severe weather, and there's a couple of other cells going up right in this area here. In the northwest U.S., still a little cold air advection coming in, but things are improving across much of that region. Yeah, the northeast U.S., there's those three squall lines. I'm not sure that they're squall lines. They're more like areas of thunderstorms, linear areas. And the strongest one is up there in Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire. That looks like a pretty good anvil there, southeast of Burlington. Can't imagine what it's like to chase in that area. It's probably very, very difficult. And let's see, Hudson Bay region, or Hudson Valley region, yeah, there's those storms. And then the others from New York City out towards north of Philadelphia. And then in the southeast U.S., stormy, about like what we would expect. And you can see the elongation of these anvils indicating that we've got some shear working on this area. And that's helping to sustain a lot of these thunderstorms here. And then we can see some evidence of circulation there in the Carolinas. And that's that trough that we saw on the 500 millibar chart. The main area of dynamic lift is off the coast there, but still we have cool conditions in the mid and upper levels, and that's helping to create some instability in that region right there. Maybe you're a fan of looking at the planets, and indeed they're by far the most spectacular things you can see in a telescope. And the good news is if you're stuck in the city, you don't have to worry about light pollution. The light and the details from planets, they penetrate light pollution with no problem. On Friday, Venus will be reaching its maximum illumination there, and that's going to be a morning star. And then on Tuesday, Jupiter will be at opposition, and that means that we're the closest in our planet's orbit to Jupiter, and it's like directly opposite of the Sun, which means Jupiter is going to be high in the sky at midnight. Now you can see Jupiter certainly right now, kind of in the same configuration, so go out and check it out tonight if you feel up to it. But Tuesday is when we will be at the closest approach. the Sierra Madre Occidental and Oriental. These are the two big mountain ranges in Mexico, kind of corresponding to the Rockies. All right, so there we go. There's the mountain ranges of Mexico. We have the Sierra Madre Occidental and the Sierra Madre Oriental. And one way you can keep that straight is you think of Oriental, you think of Eastern culture. So that's going to be east, and that's going to be the Eastern Mountain Range. Monterrey is a big city that's in the foothills of those mountains. Now, these are north-south mountain ranges, and they are important because they help channel the moist flow from the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf of California. It helps bring it more northward. Now, that's more of a problem in Arizona, where you have strong heating and an already arid region. But eventually that moisture does make it up into Arizona, and that results in the summer monsoon. Likewise, late in the summer, some of the moisture starts making it further back west into West Texas and New Mexico, and that starts the monsoon up in that area around the same time. And they tend to work synergistically. Okay, that's all I got for this evening. I hope you enjoyed the webcast. I don't have much more to pass on aside from that, so we'll get this edited and uploaded. Y'all take care, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.